I want to say a quick word about assessments of the global human rights situation that give grades. This annual report of very high standards gives grades to other countries. And there is quite a stir among other countries' governments and, in fact, among American policymakers who wish to prioritize other matters than human rights about giving grades. And objectivity is always questioned, but in the case of the Freedom House report, there's no reason for objectivity to be questioned. It is a remarkably credible source for years doing this work of looking at political liberties and civil liberties of countries around the globe.
The major message for the year is one of potential and opportunity, and this is because of what's happening in the Middle East. Africa is the most volatile region of the world. It's the part of the world that has recorded the most substantial gains over the past few years and some of the most substantial declines. Asia has been one of the modest success stories in the world over the past decade. We've seen special improvements in places like Indonesia, in Philippines, even in Singapore. And during this past year, we saw some important but guarded gains in Burma. Many things have changed in Burma, but on the other hand, this is a country that is still basically run by the same people who ran it as a dictatorship. And there are three, not one, but at least three different ethnic conflicts going on today in the country.
I think you have a deeply anxious leadership in China that knows its legitimacy is drifting away, that's sending its money and its children abroad in terms of their own personal money, because they have no faith in the future of their own regime. Chinese society is just being dramatically and rapidly transformed. And there's rising evidence that the new generation not only lacks faith in communism anymore, they think it's a joke. It's premature to call Libya a democracy because political order is still so fragile there, and the command by the state over the means of violence is still so inadequate that I think state building remains a major challenge. And until the militias can be reined in and the authority of the democratically elected state, now Freedom House judges, can really be firmly established, there's still a tremendous fragility and vulnerability in the unfolding story in Libya.
I think Larry is absolutely right. The dramatic gains that you see in Libya are, to a certain extent, an artifact of the fact that you're starting from the floor. There's almost nowhere to go but up. Mm-hmm. That is significant. It's tremendously significant and tremendously positive. But the sort of headline on this year's Freedom House report is breakthroughs in the balance, and I think Libya is a tremendously important breakthrough that is hanging in the balance. I think Libya is illustrative of the challenges Islamists face when they try to address real-world problems and when voters have real strong choices amongst parties. We can't assume that because we've seen an Islamist resurgence in these societies in transition, that is the wave, that's the future. But the fundamental realization from the Arab awakening needs to be that stabilization will not occur without political stability that's rooted in consent.
The region as a whole has been basically in free fall, led by Russia. Russia has set the tone for the other countries in the region, has acted as the model for those countries, has implemented laws that have then been copied by other countries, both in Eurasia and in other parts of the world, to restrict civil society, restrict the press. At this moment, Russia is the country that is the most pernicious when it comes to suppressing civil society.
Now it's going from a non-democracy with still some elements of pluralism and so on, to a really ugly authoritarian regime in which rights all over the place are at risk.
In country after country, Russia being the most obvious, but by no means the only country, new laws, new policies, new ways of operating aimed at circumscribing the abilities of civil society organizations to function as they should be functioning. These governments fear civil society activists because they are energetic, because they have initiative, because they understand how to use new technologies, and because they are not co-opted.
Given that the U.S. is a global power and it does have a global mix of interests, to be credible in advancing this agenda, it has to do more than say nice words. It has to have a package that is compelling, a package of pressure and incentives, and most of all, a warm welcome for societies that are moving in the right direction.
We as an international democratic community and international civil society and their own civil societies have to call these governments to a higher common standard.
Because there are movements and people and initiatives that need our support, this cries out for leadership from the community of democracies, those nations who are democratic nations, wherever they are, in Europe, in Australia, Canada, the United States, in Asia. There is a great need to support those who are trying to fight every day for freedom and human rights in their countries. These brave defenders need our support, and they need the support not least from the United States, which I would argue still needs to be a leader in this field.